Good evening and a warm welcome to one and all. My name is Shashwat DC, and on behalf of Azim Premji University, I heartily welcome you to yet another edition of Nature Writing for Children, a webinar series which is part of our broader Seeking Sustainability initiative. Today's talk is the 11th one we have in our series. For the past almost a year now, one short of a year, we've been talking about these books that have been written on nature specifically for kids. When we started this series, we were not really sure whether this genre is something that would be relevant. While we were sure of course, the relevant, how broad it could be. And there's something interesting that we realize, that while there might not be a specific segment in Indian writing for nature per se, nature writing for children per se, there are a lot of authors who are kind of working in this domain. They're writing books, and they're writing different works through different publishers, and it might not be categorized as nature writing, but it kind of reaches out to the children and talks about nature per se. And this can also be drawn into a broader ethos, where nature for us is not really an externality. We are connected with nature in our culture and our history and our ethos. So I think so that is the kind of thing that most of the writers feel like taking up this whole genre of writing itself. And in the past, we have got all these books, all these writers talking about their own processes, talking about their own challenges, talking about their thoughts. The idea herein is to have a conversation to understand, of course, the book which is there, and which I hope all our readers, all our viewers right now would be keen to buy and share it with their kids and with all the kids that they know. But also, more importantly, to understand the process, the kind of thing that they went behind. How did they take up this topic itself? How did they weave around the story, the narrative? How did they ingrain aspects of nature? So these are the things that we are looking forward to bring out from these talks. And the author we have today is very interesting in that regard. Vaishali Shroff is an award-winning children's author, and she has been writing books for a long time, almost a decade now, I should say. We just discovered that she has covered a decade of publishing books. But more importantly, her books are a little bit different in the sense that they are well-researched topics, and she kind of beautifully mixes fiction with facts, and there's an almost amount of responsibility she carries on her shoulder to to educate as well as entertain. A book should be informative and educative as well. So welcome on board, Vaishali.
Thank you so much, Shashwat, and I'm really honored to be here with you and Kaustubh. And thank you so much to Azim Premji University for extending this very warm and kind invitation to be on this panel.
And into and moderating the session for us today is Kaustubh Rau. He's a faculty at Azim Premji University. He's a biologist, and he teaches biology for the undergraduate courses. And he also does all these of outreach sessions with kids and all these lakes and everything. So that's very interesting. Thanks so much, Kaustubh, for taking time out and shepherding this discussion for us.
Oh, thanks, Shashwat, for inviting me. I'm very pleased to do this because this is in an area of my primary interest of how people connect with nature. So I'm really pleased to do this.
Yes. So without much ado, I would hand over the baton to you, Kaustubh. But before I go, one small request to all our viewers here: if you have any questions for Vaishali, or any questions regarding to nature writing or anything, please type them on in the live chat box that we have. Towards the end of the program, if time permits, we'll hopefully take them up with Vaishali and get them answers. So thank you everyone for being here. And with that, I'll the stage is yours, Kaustubh.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. So Vaishali, I think I'd like to start with the inspiration for the book, because as you say in the back of the book, you visited Chitwan National Park in Nepal, and that really kind of was a very strong experience for you and lived with you, and that led to the book. So can we start by talking about that, the inspiration for the book?
Okay, so we as a family, my husband, my kids, we are wildlife enthusiasts. We love going to national parks and visiting forests every year. And I think the first time we visited any national park was in 2010, and I think that changed our lives. We became photographers, we became birders, and and I started writing stories, about the wild side of this planet. And while when you visit any national park, you are typically in any vehicle, you're cruising through the forest, or then you're probably waiting for hours to get a glimpse of some of the beautiful creatures inside the national park. uh, Chitwan National Park, when we visited, was one of the first national parks we did by walking. So, we had a 12-hour walk through the park where it was not like a thrilling adventure in a jeep, but it was a nice, slow walk. But still, I was as excited as I always am when I visit a national park. And my nature guide, his name was Man Bahadur, and he would keep telling me, "Slow down, madam. You have missed this. Slow down. Did you see this tree? Did you hear that sound? Listen." Shh. He would keep saying, and I kept wondering, I said, why should I slow down? There's so much to see in this forest. This forest is so huge, and let us try and go as deep as we can, and see as much as we can. And then as he kept showing me things, as he kept making us hear things, I realized that, I was already missing things. I was already leaving things behind. And then the rest of the walk was very mindful. We were very aware of what was around us. Even the littlest of the creatures, or even we would notice even the swaying of the grass or the falling of a leaf. Even while walking, we would hear the pecking of a woodpecker. So this experience stayed with me, and I really wanted to take it to the children through a story. And I was so overwhelmed by the end of our walk, very exhausted as well. 12 hours in the sun is not a joke, but but it was an amazing experience, very unforgettable. And I immediately, on our way back, got my phone out and wrote the story of a girl who thinks she knows everything about the forest until she something happens, and that's how Sita's Chitwan happened. And that's how I wrote the story. And I wanted to through this book, I wanted to invite children that come see a forest. And as we read in our textbooks, a forest is not just about wild animals, the big cats and the leopards and the cheetahs and the tigers and the bears and the lions. It's about even the little bugs and the spiders and the variety of grass and the fruits and the trees that exist, that coexist rather, in that entire ecosystem. And uh, and while the forest is just like a setting in this book, I wanted children to understand that forest could be, they could replace the forest with the neighborhood. They could probably just step out of, their homes and look around and be more mindful of where they are living. Because that is, I think, being mindful about your environment is the first step to understanding that, there is much more to this, uh, to nature, to environment than what we see every day. Sometimes we just pass by, in our rush of our day-to-day life, and we don't notice that there are some beautiful rare species of trees around us, and there are some not the regular pigeons and crows and sparrows. There are some other birds like the magpies or the sunbirds. That visit these trees also. So I think it's very important to be mindful, and that is my inspiration to write this book.
Oh, fantastic. You, I think, raised a very important point about slowing down and even observing and being interested in the smaller things which are out there, and not just those fantastic big beasts that we are trained to see on National Geographic or Discovery Channel. So that's a very
That's
nice thing that you bring out in the book. Which leads me to my second question. Could you talk a little bit about the book and tell us in brief the story of the book, as it were, and some of the
Yes.
characters, because the characters are quite fascinating.
Thank you so much. And this is the book, Sita's Chitwan. And So Sita's Chitwan is the story of an 8-year-old girl, Sita, who lives in the Soraha district and on the outskirts of the Chitwan National Park in Nepal. And her father, Man Bahadur, has been a nature guide in CNP for over 25 years, and she aspires to be like her Baba, as they call in Nepali, they call the, father Baba. So she wants to be like her Baba. She's very, she's very ambitious. She's very passionate about the forest. She's very curious. She loves adventures. So she accompanies her Baba whenever he takes the tourists on walks inside the forest. And with every walk, she learns a little bit more. And over a period of time, she starts believing that she knows everything, she needs to know to show the tourists around. And but Man Bahadur is not very appreciative of this behavior. He does not approve of Sita just rushing past the forest, and he keeps asking her to slow down, and you take a deep breath and understand what's around, be more aware, be more vigilant. But Sita is, is always has her, rolls her eyes and says that, okay, fine. And again, she continues on her journey. And because of her, and she does, in the course of the story, she does find herself alone in a forest. She finds that she's lost. There are no tourists around, there's no Baba around, and then she realizes that, her father was right. And what happens next is the true adventure in the story. What happens when she's alone in the forest. So yeah, that's the gist of the story. But the story is, it's not just the story or the adventure of Sita. After the story is over, Sita takes the readers on a different adventure inside Chitwan National Park, because this where the story ends, the park begins, and that's where she talks about the history of Chitwan National Park, which is really, really important. That's also one of the reasons why I wrote this book, because Chitwan has a very disturbing past, in the sense, it used to be a royal hunting ground where the bears and rhinos and tigers were hunted down by the VIPs and the princes that were invited, and that is why earlier it was known as the Royal Chitwan National Park. And because of the insane amount of hunting that happened, the numbers, the population of all these big cats and the rhino dwindled. And then one fine day, there was a naturalist who realized that this can't go on anymore. The Terra is a beautiful landscape, and it's home to so many. The biodiversity here is so rich. It's home to so many species, and we cannot allow them to be endangered and then extinct. So then it was converted to a rhino sanctuary, where they decided to breed rhinos, and over a period of time, it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the park that it is right now. I think it was named the Chitwan National Park in the year 2011 or something. And so it's 950 square kilometers of paradise, with the backdrop of the beautiful Himalayas. You don't see that in too many national parks. So it's indeed a very beautiful park, and whenever people do get a chance to travel, they must see it. So yeah, that's a section where I talk about the history of the park, the culture, the people, the Tharus who live around, historically have lived there for years. In fact, the Chitwan National Park borders India and Nepal, in the Terai belt. So the north of India, the north of the Ganges, the Ganga, and the foothills of the Himalayas is where the Terai belt is, and bang in the center is where Chitwan is. And so we have Tharus living in India as well. And then you have the Nepali Tharus. So the culture, the biodiversity, the flora, the fauna, the conservation, exemplary conservation practices have happened in Chitwan. And, they've In fact, when I wrote this book, till the book went to press, I was waiting for the final census numbers of the rhino figures. What was the because the census was going to happen in 2020, but unfortunately, because of the pandemic, they couldn't do it. So the book was pushed by a year, and this year, only after the book went to printing, we realized that the rhino figures had changed from 600 to 752. So in a year of lockdown, it was amazing. How the figures grew. They even doubled their tiger population. So yeah, it was important to speak about these things, and I thought, while all forests and national parks have their own biodiversity and topography, this can be used as an example, and then children, when they visit other national parks in India as well, they can make notes and compare notes. It's always nice to know something about your neighboring country.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the history that you give for the park, I think several national parks in India have a similar history. I mean, the one which comes to my mind as a birder is Bharatpur, of course, which also had a very horrific hunting history, and then because of Salim Ali, it got converted into this kind of paradise for birds, and it's a success story now. So it's very similar to Chitwan in that sense. The other thing which I really like in the book is where you've highlighted the story of a guard who's actually there right now. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and the reasons for doing that?
Yes. So Sita wants to be a nature guide, and I was looking for primary sources to research my book, and I got in touch with Ms. Radha Wagle, who's the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Forest and Department, and Ministry of Forests and Wildlife in Nepal, and she put me in touch with a wildlife conservationist in Chitwan, who knows Chitwan National Park like the back of her hand, Samantha Hill, and she used to work with a nature guide known as Doma Podel, and it so happened that she was the first ever female nature guide in Nepal. She became a nature guide in 2007, and she also had a very tumultuous past, but she didn't let that get in the way of becoming the first nature guide, because in the history of Nepal, because generally it is a very male dominated profession, because people want very strong people, physically strong. They think that you need to be really physically strong to defend tourists from encounters with wildlife, and it is a very and tedious to be walking from dawn to dusk all day. So women were not hired for this job, but she's a real trailblazer, and when I got to know her, it was such a happy coincidence that her true life story was so similar to what I had written in the story of Sita. So yeah, Doma is a pioneer. In fact, if you compare that with India had the first female nature guides in 2021 in Jim Corbett. So yeah, the first 7 female nature guides were hired only this year. So yes, change is happening, and we need more women, in this field, and to take more responsible positions, because not only according to Doma, now she is training other women in Nepal to become nature guides, because it is also an important source of income for them, because they get into ecotourism, and it makes them more independent, and they also work with the military over there to avoid human wildlife conflicts. So yeah, it's amazing that I have met these people, and who have been really inspiring. And I have a lovely interview in the book with Doma Podel, and where she talks about how she became a nature guide, how she was in school, what were her struggles, and how did she overcome them. And that's one of my favorite bits in the book, actually. So I hope when the readers actually read it, they also be inspired by her. That's Doma. Oh, okay, that's her. And that's the interview, Meet Doma Podel. This is a fun chapter. So, yeah.
So, I mean, really, it's like much more than just a storybook, although the story itself is quite nice and fun to read. Where you also, the other nice thing I liked was that you highlight, creatures that normally, which wouldn't be highlighted in books, right from birds to, the Himalayan field mouse, and you
Yeah.
talk a lot about trees. And
Yes.
of course, one of the main characters in the book is the Genda. So, do you want to talk about the Genda and its importance to Chitwan, or did you see one?
Oh, yes. There you see Gaidas. That's the one-horned, Asiatic one-horned rhino. Everywhere. You'll be probably walking and you'll see them on the sidewalk. And they are very peaceful as they don't look ferocious at all. They're quite gentle looking. They're huge, and it's just that it's the size that's intimidating, but they're that's true. Even I've seen tigers at very close quarters, and I've seen tigers getting scared of humans, just trying to retreat and going behind the grass because they fear that they will attack their babies or their cubs or things like that. And it's the same with rhinos. Rhinos attack only, and that is only mainly mama rhinos attack if they are with their babies, as a defense to protect them from any potential attacks. So just like any mom, they're protective about their babies. But yes, they're majestic beasts, and there are so many myths around these. It's really sorry state of affairs when we think about that how people think that the horn of a rhino can be of has medicinal properties. It's a lump of hair. There's nothing to the horn. And so just being hunting the rhinos down for horns is absolutely cruel and mindless, and we should do everything to protect this beautiful species. So and yeah, there are, like you said, there are a lot of other tiny creatures, lots of birds. There are, if you are an avid birder, and they say that if you walk a day in Chitwan, you can spot easily 100 species. Yeah, if you have an eye for birds. So yeah, that's Chitwan alone has about 550 to 600 species of birds, and they still feel that about 150 to 200 are yet to be discovered. They are discovering more. And we have the spiny babbler, which is or they call it the Khande Bhayankar, because it has a very shrill voice. No, it's almost noisy, and they live in the bushes. So they are also endangered right now, because all those bushes where they actually live, they are being chopped down to construct the highway. So that is also endangered, and they are trying to protect and see that they protect its habitat, because it's very difficult. Natural habitats, we can't, as human beings, we cannot create natural habitats. We can only conserve and preserve them. So once a natural habitat is gone, it's gone. You can't recreate it. You can only preserve what is there and ensure that it remains. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So, could you, if you don't mind, would you read out to us a little bit from the book, any parts that you like, or that you think might be suitable for now?
Sure. Can we have the slide up, please? So I think we can go down to the next slide. So yes, like I said earlier when I was talking about the story, Sita, an overzealous, feisty character who wants to take the tourists for a walk inside Chitwan National Park. And that's how the book starts, welcome to Chitwan National Park. My Baba and I can't wait to show you the wonders of this forest. And if we move on to the next slide, you see how she's so excited, and the love for everything in the forest is so evident on her face, like right when she's looking at little bugs, or to the left, if you see, where she's kneeling down and looking at footprints, which are probably footprints of the Bengal tiger that may have been around in the vicinity. And so she keeps showing tourists these things and surges ahead. And like I said earlier, Man Bahadur doesn't approve. So in the next slide, as he sees Sita rush through the forest, he says, Sita loved to breeze through the forest route to guide the visitors and show them as much as possible in a flash. And he would say, "Slow down, Situ, take a deep breath. Stop for the signs of movement and sounds. Listen to the rustling of leaves, the snapping of stems. Watch out for that patch of elephant grass that moves while the rest of the forest seems still. You never know if there is a rhino or a tiger resting there." Sita would gulp, but march on, blending into the group and ignoring the advice. This happens a few times, and then she actually finds herself alone in the forest. If we can move to the next slide. That's right. Where's everyone? Where's Baba? Suddenly, Sita realized that she was all alone in the forest. She had come too far. She looked around very carefully, but there was no one in sight. Drops of sweat trickled down her little forehead and her sharp nose. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. She could hear the loud thumping sounds of her racing heartbeats in the stillness of the forest. Sita feared the worst, but she heard her Baba's voice in her head. "Slow down, Situ. Take a deep breath." Sita took a slow, deep breath and tried to trace the path they had taken to get there. She heard the haunting sound of a spiny babbler. She saw the elephant grass move and imagined a Bengal tiger leaping right at her. She thought she saw the elusive clouded leopard on the branch of a tree and quickly ducked and moved ahead stealthily. She turned around with a jerk when she heard the rustling of leaves, the snapping of stems. Sita continued to take deep breaths. Where is the rest of the group? She reached the spot where they had seen the rhino footprints. Out of the blue, Sita heard a faint voice. "Here, near the pit." Okay, so what happens near the pit? What pit is this? You got to read this book to find out. But I would also like to read one question that I had asked Doma from the interview. That very
Yeah.
that summarizes this book very well. So I'm just going to jump to the non-fiction bit. That's right. And there's this question. So in this interview, it is Sita who's interviewing Doma. And this is a question that Sita asks. "Wow, you wear so many hats, Doma. My Baba inspired me to become a nature guide. Who inspired you?" So Doma replies, "My family's house in Soraha is along the border of CNP. Elephants destroyed our bamboo and grass house a few times. Rhinos, deer, and wild boars ate our crops. Once, a sloth bear attacked my father. Coming from a poor family, it was hard to recover from these losses. In 2004, we lost our beloved mother to an unexpected rhino attack. She had gone to the forest to collect firewood for the house. But I still love animals and forests. My mother treated me no different than my brothers. She always encouraged me to follow my heart and step out to do something for society. In school, I was part of the Green Club and participated in plantation and garbage collection events. That's where my journey to be a nature guide began, and I never looked back." Okay, so inspiration to be an environmentalist at heart can come from anywhere. It's not just by visiting forests that you be inspired. And we need more Jane Goodalls. We need more David Attenboroughs. We need more Greta Thunbergs. We need more Dr. Salim Alis. We need we need more children and to become naturalists and wildlife conservationists. And I feel that if by reading this book, even if one child, decides that, no, I'm going to do something about the environment, and it could be anything, they don't all have to be conservationists and, scientists. They could do it in their, in their capacities, in their small ways, through sustainable living or planting trees with their parents. And there are so many possibilities. So this book shows that it is possible if we are more mindful of our environment, and we are more thoughtful about the creatures who we and we are more compassionate and empathetic about everybody, and understand that this planet does not belong only to us. It belongs to the millions of species and creatures who live with us. And if we show that empathy, then we can coexist. Only 35% of the natural habitats in the world are remaining, and every 10 years we lose 5%. So if we do the math, we are not too far from losing it all. So it's actually high time that we all take action, close this book and do something about the environment than just it's time for action.
Actually, the answer you just read out, I mean, Doma's story, is a very interesting point that comes out, is that people who have had a very deep relationship with nature from very early on, they seem to take things in their stride, in the sense she's faced so much loss, but it's not
Right.
like she hates the park or things associated with it, but there is a kind of acceptance, which I've also heard about, from other friends who are ecologists and conservationists, about people who live on the edges of parks and interact with wild animals. There is an acceptance there, which is quite remarkable. Even though they face loss, I mean, raiding of crops or houses getting torn down, but they still say animals also have a right to their place.
But it's not easy,
Of course,
being at
of
the
course.
receiving end of things. And what I loved about what I read about Chitwan and what they do in Nepal is that everybody from the prime minister to the local are involved, to the military. Everybody is involved, and they work as a single unit in fighting against poaching or species. Am I there? Am I audible? Are we stuck?
No, you were lost for a brief second.
Oh,
You're back.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did I stop? Should I start
No,
again?
no, we got what you were saying.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So you were
So
saying that everybody in Nepal is involved.
yes, and I think that is where Doma came from. She realized that human wildlife conflict is always going to be there, because we are always going to use land to support the increasing population, for agriculture needs, for infrastructure needs. And as long as we understand the forest and the animals, and understand that conflict is going to happen, but at the same time we take measures that, for instance, if there is a bear or a tiger or a rhino walks straight into their fields, they immediately have warning systems where they warn the military or the nearby protection units, and they come and they take the animal away and lead them back into the forest. And then they also have a personnel who actually sit with the farmers and the people who live there, and make them understand that, okay, uh, you did a good thing, encourage them that you did a good thing by calling us, and we've saved the animal as well, and we have saved your crops as well. So there is a good system in place, and I think this needs to happen in and I'm sure this must be happening in most national parks, because now there is more aware about conservation. People are standing up and understanding that these the animals don't have a voice, and it is very important to give a voice to the voiceless. So yes, change is happening, and I hope it continues.
So if I could kind of segue a little bit and talk about your journey as a writer. What inspires you? You said in the beginning, like the natural world is an inspiration based on all the trips that you've done. But
Yeah.
what kind of set you off on writing?
Um, I've been writing as a child, actually. Since we started writing essays and letters in school, I used to be that kid who used to look forward to language exams. And whenever I got my question paper, I would immediately flip to the backside where there would be three options to write an essay or an autobiography and a letter. And I couldn't wait to finish my paper to attempt. I used to attempt sometimes all three, like all three topics. I used to just love writing essays, and I kept writing, even in my free time or during in school, or when I used to come back home, the back pages of my notebooks were always filled with some kind of limerick or rhyme, or and so I subconsciously I was always writing. And my first published I started writing, doing a lot of poetry, and my first poem was published when I was about 14 in the Indian Express. This was in 1992 when we had the riots in Bombay, and I used to live at a place where I used to see all the conflict happening, the mindless riots and the fights, and I was so overwhelmed at that age that I wrote a poem, and then it was published in the Indian Express. And that and those were the days where we did not have computer, email, internet, and I used to get postcards as fan mail from army. I got one from uh, Darjeeling, one from Siachen, and I still have them, actually. Just a poem, and I never thought it was such a big deal to write it. For me, I was like, okay, I didn't know how big it was, that people actually, and they actually encouraged me that you must write more, and that stayed with me somehow. Like every other good kid who was good in academics, I did my engineering and did my business administration. I was in my corporate world, but I kept writing, and I started writing short stories for adults. And somewhere I don't know where I think in 2008 I had this thing that I wanted to simplify the kind of things I'm writing. I wanted to go down to children, and seeing if I could write stories, and I started enjoying them. So I think since then I've been writing for children, and I've loved every moment of this journey. Uh, and whether they are picture books, chapter books, illustrated books, articles I've written for magazines, columns, I've loved writing, and I don't think I want to stop anywhere. I want to continue writing for children. So, and yeah, and places, like you said, places inspire me a lot. Um, One of my previous books, The Adventures of Padma and a Blue Dinosaur, uh, published by HarperCollins. This was a book that I wrote after I visited the dinosaur park in Rahioli. I was shocked when I got to know that we have natural fossil site in our own country. And so accessible, not just there, somewhere. It's not like in a remote place where nobody can visit. Everybody in the country and in the world can come and visit and see fossils in their natural state, dinosaur eggs in their natural state. And I kept wondering that why haven't we ever known about this place? It is so important. You know, dinosaurs are almost worshipped the world over, and people are crazy about them. And paleontology is such an important subject. And that there also I took up a female protagonist, because paleontology is also a field where there are not too many females. So yes, that was also a story about a girl who wants to discover fossils and become a paleontologist, and a story about the dinosaurs of India. And then I have also written about Tadoba Tiger Reserve. I've written about many places in Kashmir as well. These are the stories that are part of our CBSE and ICSE curriculum as well. Uh, so yes, places inspire me a lot. and I enjoy bringing these rare places to children so they can see a world when they open the pages, a very different world, and hopefully they experience it someday.
Wow, I mean, so your writing is quite varied actually, and some very topics. And if I were to ask you, I mean, so what makes for good writing for children? I mean, because I think it's extremely difficult to write for children, and not talk down to them in some sense. So how do you go about that? Uh,
You're right. It's not easy to write for children because, and in fact, the younger the children get, the more difficult it gets to write. Because you have to be very mindful of the words, the language, and how crisp you can be, and how much they can understand at that age. So, but yeah, I think any book that a child can have a conversation with, or a book that has a conversation with a child in their language, is a good book. Any book uh, that does not talk down to children, that does not hide facts, but explains things, concepts, complex issues in a manner in which they can understand. For instance, I have this book. If we can have the if we can have the slide on where I have my books. So I have this book, The Strange Case of Nayantara, which is about touch without consent in children. It is. It stems from the fact that more than 99% of the perpetrators in child abuse cases are known people. They could be family, relatives, acquaintances, friends, neighbors, and it is. As Indians, in traditionally, when we are growing up as children, we had relatives coming over, and they would take us in their lap, they would hug us, and they would pull our cheeks and throw us up in the air and do all sorts of things, and we were expected to oblige because it would be disrespectful if we say no. We were never taught how to say no, and that is one of the reasons why children, so many children are victims these days. And this story talks about consent, and makes children understand, what is consent, and why is consent so important, why is our body autonomy so important, why it is important to understand that our body is only ours and it doesn't belong to anybody else. So yes, our the writing in India is getting very bold. We are getting very, very inclusive. We don't, you don't find very many stories these days that discriminate based on caste or faith or race, or even there is gender expression. Books are very diverse, and I think it's a very interesting phase for Indian kidlit, Indian children's literature. And I would really encourage all the parents who are watching this, all the parents, educators, that if you are looking for any books, for your children, do look for Indian authors, books that have been published by some really wonderful independent publishing houses in India, and where the creators, where the publisher, the illustrator, the authors, all are Indian, and they have all the stories are Indian in context, so it is very easy to understand. You're not going to see stories just about scones and pies and apple pies. You will see idlis and dosas and vada pavs in books. You will have local Indian homes and settings. You'll have festivals won't always be Christmas and Halloween and Thanksgiving. You'll see, and there won't be snow outside our houses most. So you'll see. So yes, it's important for children to understand, that to be able to relate to the characters, to the setting, to the plots. And I feel we have really matured as an industry, and it's amazing, the kind of authors and books that are coming out. Really, there people should look out for these books.
Yeah, I mean, even I've noticed there's been kind of an explosion in children's publishing in India. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
There are a couple of questions. Let me just take them. One is
sure.
Vijayta is asking, she has loved your book on dinosaurs, probably as much as the kids. When you write a book, is there a specific audience that you have in mind? And how do you manage to engage readers across the ages?
Okay, that's a
You
good
can see the
question.
question. Yeah.
Okay, that I think that's a good question because when you're talking about dinosaurs, everybody from a 2-year-old to an adult is interested, and it was very difficult for me to place this book because when you're actually talking dinosaurs, when I had my first session, in my book launch, most of the kids that were there were 2 to 3 year olds to about 5 year olds, and the book is positioned around 7 to 8 year old. So, but if you see the book, there is a story which can be read aloud to about. So I always ensure that whatever stories I read can be read aloud to younger kids, can be read independently by the target audience, and can be and even an older audience that I know. Of 11 to 12 to 14-year-olds who have read the dinosaur book and have decided to take up paleontology, because there is I also speak about careers like in Sita's Chitwan. I've spoken about forest related careers that children can take up. I want to like in every book I want to show that there is a possibility of doing something beyond the book, like that, like when you it's not just about reading a story and closing the book. How can you be a part of this book? I want the child to see that, okay, I want to be Padma, or I want to be Sita when I grow up, or I want to be be something different, but I want to do something different in the forest, or I want to explore more dinosaur species in the flatlands of India. So yes, the target audience is important. When I'm talking to about consent, when I talk about to older kids, I talk about issues of molestation, I talk about stalking, I talk about issues that they can understand. When I talk to younger children, I talk about bad touch, good touch. But the book can be read by anybody, but it can be read to anybody, can be read by anybody. So I don't believe there's an age related to any book. Anybody can, every reader perceives a book in a very different way and takes away something different. Each child, if I keep 10 children in front of me and ask them to read any book, and after that I ask them, okay, what is your takeaway from the book? I'll probably get 10 different takeaways. uh, you know like I did Sita's Chitwan with children, and I asked at the end of the session, I asked everybody to draw their own Chitwan, what they got from it. Some people drew like a big nature guide with a proper uniform. Some people drew animals and mountains and trees, and some people actually made diagrammatic versions of the birds and labeled the wings, and you know uh, so it was, every child understood something different. One person made a poster, of Save the Rhino. So it's very beautiful to see this journey. The true journey of any book begins after it is written. It takes on various avatars. It goes places, and that's what I love about this. About writing books. What the true adventure begins once the child starts reading it, and I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah, that's a very nice point you've highlighted, that you've also said your books have been translated into different languages. So now it's reaching places you may not have thought of originally when you were
Yeah,
writing it. So that's quite
I've
nice.
already been approached by publishers to translate. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm getting some disturbance. No, even Sita's Chitwan, hopefully it may be translated to Nepali soon.
Oh, nice.
So,
Nice.
yeah, so because children in
That would be
Nepal,
very nice. Yeah.
yeah. I have books that have been translated to more than 17 languages. We have publishers in India like Tulika, Pratham, where
Yeah.
books are automatically translated to 8 to 9 languages. And recently I did a project where They translated regional stories to English. So I translated from my mother tongue, Gujarati, a very old tale, which was a story written by a very renowned children's author, to English, and it's been received very warmly by readers. And because the thing about translation is that we have hundreds of languages and dialects in our country. I think thousands, actually 16,000. And just imagine, every language has stories. And if we are reading only a single language, say we are reading only English, how many stories are lost on us? How many stories do we not know? You know, and so with every language, a language is not just a language. It's an ideation. There are thoughts. There are expressions that happen only in a certain language. You can't translate those things. So it's very important to translate English, books from English to our regional languages, so that more it reaches out to more and more people. We're a huge country. We have, and we need to reach out to, the smaller cities, towns, villages, and thankfully, most of the stories that are being written these days have a very universal appeal. They are, uh, you know. They're agnostic when it comes to socioeconomic bias and things like that, and so it can appeal to any child, in any geography in our country, and I think that's wonderful change that has happened.
Yeah. There's one more question. Dinesh is asking, he teaches in a school. We try to ingrain ethos about nature in our students. Sadly, there are not many books on nature that are available, and if they are, they're very costly. How can we promote this?
Okay, first you can get Sita's Chitwan, and you can start there. Just joking. But yeah, it is. I think one of the ways you could do it is, encourage children to write their own, say couplets or 4-line poems on nature, what they see around them, just what they see around them. You look out, ask them to look out of the window, maybe from their, from their homes, and what kind of trees do they see, what kind of the bird. Make notes. You know, um, you can go to. There is this website called storyweaver.org where you'll find a category called nature, and there are plenty of stories related to nature that can be read online by children. Uh, and I'm going to ask you to repeat the second part of the question, if that's all right.
No, one is about ingraining ethos about nature. The other one is about the availability of books on nature. There are not too many, and they're saying he's saying they're expensive, they're costly. So, is
Okay.
there a way to get around that?
So Pratham books are not expensive at all. Uh, and there are plenty of books. There are plenty of books. There have been books just on seeds. There have been book on trees. There have been book on, on birds. There are books on, there's on animal poop. There is a book called Jungle Radio, which is just about sounds of animals and how to recognize them. So it's it's possible. It's so all you need to do is, just look for publishers like Pratham, Tulika, Karadi, even Penguin and Harper. They all have books on nature, and if you Google or go to their official websites, you'll get a list of books, and you can contact them directly. And if you're actually buying for your school or library, you could probably get some discounts, so that could help you for your school. And when it comes to ingraining the ethos is actually by doing things. Have some plantation activities, clean up drives, talk about dry and wet waste segregation. We look at talk in basic things that we can, because it's only when we start at this level can we, we can't just suddenly expect children to start growing forests. We had I'm from Bombay, and we had the RA forest thing happening, where the government decided to release a mandate that they would cut more than 2,500 trees to for the metro construction. And what we did is I gathered all the kids in my society. We got together, we made banners on, protecting trees. We used reusable paper, so we don't use new paper. And then we went on to the streets. We chanted, we had our slogans. It was pouring, still the kids did not move, because we did not move. So children emulate our behavior. So if we are more, start leading more sustainable lives, if we stand up for these things, even children will do it. But we have to set these examples, and we have to involve children in it. So these may and this year, although that entire part of RA is part of the Sanjay Gandhi National Park, so they did save these trees, and it was a pleasure to share that story with the children and make them understand that it actually worked. That these things work. It's not just a random protest. They work. So in fact, one of my forthcoming books, There's a Leopard in My House, talks about how we take away the natural habitats, that there are forests even in urban areas. In cities like Bombay, we have forests, and how we are encroaching upon the natural habitats, and because of which the animals, the wild animals like the deer and the leopard, and they are decreasing in number. So how and why we need to protect and conserve these natural habitats. Like I said earlier, we can't create new natural habitats, but we need to preserve them. So we can start, with small things, conservation of water, planting trees, making banners. Every little thing counts, and every small step will go a very long way. So I hope I've answered your question, sir.
Yeah. And I think you also have an important point there about the importance of having positive stories, especially for children. So this RA Milk Colony is definitely a positive story which has
Yeah.
happened in the last year, which is very nice.
Yeah.
And there are certain stories like this within India which are really inspiring. Just the action of a few individuals, really. And so I
Yeah.
think we need to highlight them more and maybe write more books about them. So
Yeah.
there's
In fact, we are part
definitely,
of this project called the Restore RA project, where every weekend, all the volunteers in the group, they go to the forest and plant new saplings, and they plant native trees, because uh, when you plant native trees, the roots go deeper and stronger, and they survive for much longer. So that they're changing the entire landscape over there, and planting fruit bearing trees, so we get more birds and butterflies. So people are more aware now. People have changed. They are actually doing things, something about the environment. They are not taking things lying down, and I think that is amazing, and that is a trend that we should continue. And if we raise children who are aware, they will also, it will become a part of their life. It won't be something special that they're doing. It'll become uh, you know like like a lifestyle for them, growing up. Now I don't see any kid littering these days. We don't see kids littering, because they've been brought up saying that, don't litter. So you will so yes, change is happening, and the earlier we start, the better it is, uh, in making children aware of their environment, and how they can contribute towards the conservation of their environment.
so I have one more question, sorry, on the same theme of writing for children. I was wondering what kind of inspires you, or who do you, or are there certain themes that inspire you, or authors that you find inspiring in their approach to writing? Because, like you were saying, that we grew up on a steady diet of Enid Blyton, uh,
Right.
not much else. But now we're kind of spoiled for choice. And even I have read quite a few of my children's books, and I've really liked them. So there's been this kind of change.
So I'd like to share an anecdote from my childhood. I was about 10 years old. And in Bombay, around Churchgate area, we used to have these book auctions. So one day, my father came back from work with a big sack of books. There was an auction over there, 60 books for 60 rupees. And he thought it was amazing. Vaishali will love it. So he got the books. and he was never much of a reader, so he didn't know what is a children's book, what book she needs. And when I emptied the sack, and the books that tumbled down were unlike anything I'd ever seen. Okay, there was Leo Tolstoy, there was Guy de Maupassant, and so I grew up. There was Tagore and Satyajit Ray, and so I grew up, reading these guys since I'm 10. So there is a lot of so my writing is inspired, is very lyrical. I love to write, my narratives are very descriptive, and I love to, my prose is and verse. So my writing has been always been inspired, by these Indian authors, and I. So an inspiration, if you talk about inspiration about the topics that I write, it could be anything, like it's there could be childhood experiences, there could be things that I see around me. For instance, my first book, the Raindrops, it was inspired by I was sitting with my son by the window, and we were stuck. It was pouring outside. There was no school, and he started making patterns on the window with the raindrops, and that's how I wrote that story. And my other book, Ari, was a combination of my childhood experience and my son's. As a child, I was very shy, and I couldn't. I love to act, though. I used to, you know, sit in front of the mirror and keep acting and saying dialogues, from movies and plays and books that I read, and I used to enjoy doing that. But when it came to school, I used to. I have a lot of stage fright, and I couldn't tell my teacher that I want to be a part of it. And my son, one day he comes back from school, and that stayed with me. Uh, I, my son comes back from school, and he looks like really upset, and I'm like, what happened? And he's like, we have an annual day in school, but I'm not selected. I wanted to be the lion, but they didn't pick me. And I'm like, it's okay, there's always another time. And I went back to doing what I was doing, and he went back to his room. And after about 10-15 minutes, I walk into his room, and I see him in front of the mirror, and he has made these big whiskers on his face, and he has an old his father's old sock in his arm, and he has a bag on his head, and he's roaring away. And I'm like, okay, he somehow found a way to become a lion. And and I thought that uh, in this world where which is designed to for extroverts, introverts have the potential, but they don't have the same opportunities. And I thought that a story where we could tell children that if you really want to be something, you can empower yourself. You don't need anybody else. You can create your own opportunities. So that's where my book came from. So yeah, books, ideas, come from.
Wow, so ideas really crop up for you very easily, looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
I think we are almost out of time. But before we end, I just want to forgot to ask about one last thing, which is the illustrations in these books. In particular, this book is very nice. So actually, could we show some of the animals and birds which were there? I think there was a slide.
yeah.
Maybe you want to talk about the illustration
Yeah, so we can go to
very
slide
quickly, I
number
think.
4.
Because, yeah.
Yep, yep. So the illustrations are done by Kalp Sanghvi. He's actually an animator and a movie maker. So if you see the illustrations in the book are very cinematic,
Yeah.
they have a sense of movement, and which is what we really wanted. If you can go to the previous slide.
Previous, I think. Yeah.
Slide. Yeah, so come down to the next slide, please. Yeah, so if you see, we have Sita, who's always on the move, running, and showing things. And he's done a wonderful job of showing how the excitement on her face, and
Yeah. That really
the
comes
the
across.
colors in the forest. Can we go down to the next slide, please? Yeah, even this sequence, it's like a it's an imaginary sequence, but he's really played it out really well. And there are some things I've not shown.
But I think there's one more of those animals and birds. No,
Yeah,
I saw that earlier.
in the book, in the
Yeah,
slides.
on the slides. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Can we do the slideshow from the beginning so I can? Yeah, this is the one.
This one. Yeah.
Yeah. So the book talks about mentions all the species, the biodiversity that you see in Chitwan, but it focuses on Chitwan's big five, which is the elephants, the Asiatic elephant, the one-horned rhino, the Bengal tiger, the clouded leopard, and that little tail that you see popping on the side is the gharial,
Okay.
the long-snouted
Yeah.
crocodile.
Yeah.
So they are all in danger, but they are all protected and preserved in beautiful ways in Chitwan. Even they have something really fascinating. It's covered in the book. It's called a vulture restaurant. So in this vulture restaurant, they actually have put carcasses of cattle, and the vultures come to feed on them. So
Nice.
vultures population across India and Nepal started dying out because cattle that are that are sick, they are treated with diclofenac, and that proved to be harmful to the vultures, and they've stopped that treatment. That drug is banned, but through these restaurants, what happens is they get carcasses that are free of diclofenac, and and vultures are very important for our ecosystem. They keep it clean. They only feed on dead animals. They only scavenge on dead bodies. So after the tiger or a rhino and all that done with their kill, they come and eat the leftovers and clean up the place. So everybody is important, and that's the beauty of a forest. Once you're in it, you understand that everybody, from the bug to the grass to these huge birds and animals, they all play an equal role, and a balance, and maintain a balance. And like the tiger, why are we so crazy about protecting the tiger? Not just because it's a beautiful and a gorgeous cat. It's because and not because it's at the top of the food chain, but that when the tiger population is alive and thriving, that there are enough herbivores in the forest. And when there are enough herbivores in the forest, that there is enough greens around for them to feed on. So and that's how the equilibrium is maintained. So yes, every creature plays a role in their ecosystem, and it's very important that we conserve. And books like Sita's Chitwan, hopefully they play an important role in spreading awareness about this, and uh, you know and raising a generation that is more aware and more compassionate, more empathetic towards other creatures. And and hope, and more importantly, we don't want our children and their other generations to grow up seeing these beautiful creatures only in books like these. We want them to see them. We want these creatures to be around. They've already been around for millions of years, and we need to do our bit so that they are there for another you know million years. So
Amen. So on that note, a very important note, I think it's time to close this very enjoyable talk. Thanks a lot, Vaishali, for coming here and talking about your book and the book writing process and reading out parts of the story. It was also very a learning experience for me. I believe the next edition of this talk is going to be about a book written by Pankaj Sheksaria, and it's called Waiting for Turtles, which is, I think, about, and we don't know who's going to interview him, but we do chime in for that one. Okay, so
thank you so
thank you,
much,
Vaishali.
Doctor.
And yeah, and
Thank you for
see you
reading the
soon.
book and asking such interesting questions. And I truly enjoyed this conversation, and I hope there are more and more children and parents listening in, and not picking up not just Sita's Chitwan, but looking up more books on the environment and nature that are available.
Yeah,
And yes, to a better world, to a better planet.
thank you.
Yes.